Sounds
Perfect.
good. Right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to our first workshop for Fit for the Holidays. I'm really excited to have my friend Teri Patterson here. She is the Sober Nutritionist. We go back a couple of years now. I was on her podcast one time, so I am absolutely thrilled to have her here with us to share her wisdom. The topic for today is how to avoid excess sugar during the holidays. So let's get into it. Welcome, Teri. Thank you for being here.
Well, thanks so much for having me. I love the idea of being part of one of the speakers for Fit for the Holidays. It's such a great offer.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, so we are a bunch of runners trying to get sober, and stay fit for the holidays. Can't wait to hear your expertise on the subject. So, before we get started on the topic, why don't you introduce yourself and tell everybody what your background is and how you got here?
Of course, yeah. And I apologize. I can hear my dog barking because somebody's driving up my driveway. So if there's any background noise, my apologies. But
That's life.
yeah, it is. So when I stopped drinking, it's been 9 years for me. So that was in 2015. And like many of us, I was sort of at a loss to do with all of my what do I do with all my excess time and energy? And so I wanted to, figure out like what could I do that felt like I was moving forward in my life. And so I'd always been what I call a wellness enthusiast. And I decided to go to nutrition school. And so I went to nutrition school, the Nutritional Therapy Association through Washington, and it was a great experience. But initially I thought like, they're all going to be my people, like nobody will be drinking. And then like, haha, that just wasn't the case. Humans, right? And so what I did though was I learned a lot about nutrition. And I noticed that there was this sort of disconnect between what I like to call true wellness. And so when I started offering nutrition support for clients after I graduated from the Nutritional Therapy Association, I realized that what I really wanted to talk to people about was this not drinking journey, like how it impacts our nutrition and how we can use food to support us on the journey and all of that. And, there just wasn't a lot of people talking about it. And so I did that for a while, but I didn't have as many skills or tools around, alcohol-free coaching. So in 2019, I certified with This Naked Mind through Annie Grace's program, and I was one of their first one of their first sober coaches, which was pretty exciting. And so then I was kind of off and running, and I really wanted to try to blend nutrition and alcohol-free living. And so my primary focus is really about alcohol and life after alcohol, but I love to bring in the nutritional part because I think that the more tools we can have on this journey, let's make it easier on ourselves.
I love that. Wow, the Annie Grace program is amazing. And I wish that I could have done that, but anyways, I digress. You know, one of the things that I struggled with a lot when I got sober was, okay, I'm sober now, but why isn't the weight falling off? Like, why do I not know what to eat? Food is so confusing because we hear this and we hear that, and there's this diet and that diet. And so it's really hard to know what is right and what is going to work for us. So let's get into it. I know you have a workshop for us. So go ahead and share your slides, and we'll just let you talk and then we'll answer questions after.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see if I've got this all set up here. So I'll just start kind of with your question too, Amber, because I think one of the most fascinating things, you can see my screen, right?
Actually, it looks black on my
Oh,
side.
let's try that again. This has been happening to me lately. I must have changed a setting. Isn't it fun?
Yeah, and Zoom did this whole update. Here we go. I can see it. The
Okay,
holiday
good.
sugar blues. What
This
a
is our
great
little
topic.
Yeah, this is our little sugar monster, right?
Yeah.
Because we all feel like, we have one. And one of the things when it comes to nutrition is we can feed the sugar monster or we can starve the sugar monster. And, just to circle back to your thought, Amber, about what to eat. And that's a little bit different than, just focusing on sugar. But I think that what we have to understand is that while we can take alcohol 100% out of our diet, we can never do that with sugar. So we have to understand that we're always going to be in that moderation place. And if you ever tried moderating around alcohol, which I did for a long time, it's a very noisy place. And it can be very challenging to play that moderation game because it creates a lot of noise. And we also can have a lot of what I call food noise. And so one of the things that I like to help people do is if you have had some time alcohol free and you are working toward, changing your relationship with alcohol, we can use a lot of the same tools. And it's really helpful because we can say like, oh gosh, this is what I recall doing when I was breaking up with alcohol. How do I apply that to having a better relationship with sugar? And so I find that it's really a progressive journey to understanding, how we break up with alcohol really helps us with sugar, I guess is the best way to say that. So, and I think that we often think that we are eating more sugar when we stop drinking. And sometimes we're confused about why that is. So hopefully we'll clear a little bit of that up today as well. So I wanted to start off with, first of all, like, why is sugar so hard to resist? So one of the things that, I was never taught this until I went to nutrition school, and it's really because our bodies are designed to run on glucose. It is that quick source of energy. And as runners, you know this, right? If you're running a long race, you might actually have like glucose packs that you're taking. I have a mentor who is she's an Iron woman or Iron Man. And so I remember her telling me like what they eat, during the race. And so you can see that our body gets a lot of quick burning energy from glucose. And so when we feel like we want sugar, that's our brain telling us we need energy. And so rather than just saying like, oh, I need more willpower or I'm eating too much sugar, we just need to understand like, oh, this is part of our biology. And now I have to think about how I provide my body with energy that isn't overdoing sugar. So the other really important part to think about is dopamine. And we're probably all familiar with dopamine because of the alcohol conversation, right? And so it's important to understand that dopamine isn't about pleasure as much as it's about motivation. And so dopamine is a neurotransmitter that impacts our brain when we have certain substances. And so I just completed a psychology of addiction course through Stanford University, and I got to study with Dr. Anna Lemke, who wrote Dopamine Nation. And so what we know about dopamine is that when we have alcohol, it's going to spike our dopamine, and we're going to have this pleasure response. And then in order to balance out, we're going to have a pain response. So we're in like kind of this teeter-totter of pain and pleasure. Well, it's very similar to sugar. And so sugar also has a spike in dopamine response. And our brain says, do more of that. And so often people will say, well, why am I eating so much sugar after I stop drinking alcohol? So let's think about this. You stop drinking alcohol and your dopamine is now plummeted. And so you're almost in this state of dopamine deficit because you are having an abnormal amount of dopamine. And so now you're in a dopamine deficit and your brain, you eat sugar and your brain goes, oh yeah, I remember that, do more of that. And so that, if you're early in your recovery and you're really just noticing that sugar seems to be, really the sugar monster seems to be rearing its head, just know that we don't want to feed the sugar monster. We want to start to, have less sugar so that that pain pleasure balance becomes more neutral. And the cool thing about dopamine is while we're in a dopamine deficit in the beginning, we will reset those dopamine receptors naturally. And that just takes a little bit of time. And so we've got to play this sort of game of not too much sugar so that we're overdoing it and we're staying in that pain pleasure balance. But we can also have some sugar because our brain is in that dopamine deficit. So, and then the other thing that's really interesting about why sugar is so hard to resist is go on a little thought journey with me, if you will. So I was born in 1960, and there was like one type of hot sauce when I was a kid, right? And there were, when you talked about having sugar or sweets, it was homemade goodies and it was maybe a candy bar. But nowadays, there are entire storefronts where the only thing they sell is hot sauce. And we see so many different types of sugar, not just candy bars, but we see sour punch kids and, all kinds of things that are really hyper sweet, hyper salty, hyper spicy. And so we've really hijacked our palates. And the more sugar we eat, the more our palates are going to expect that super hit of sugar for things to taste sweet. So in one of the nutrition classes that I run, we talk about okay, so at the beginning of it, they eat a Granny Smith apple, and it's very tart and doesn't have a lot of natural sugar. I mean, it does because apples do have sugar, but to our palate, it tastes like, sour. And then we go through this pulling sugar and excess sugar out of the diet for a period of time. And then someone will eat that Granny Smith apple and they'll be like, oh my gosh, it's delicious. It's so sweet. And so part of breaking up with sugar is retraining our palate. So the more sugar we eat, and the artificial sugars also really impact that dynamic. And so, we're looking for something sweet and nothing tastes sweet. And so now we're reaching for something that's more sugar and more sugar. And artificial sweeteners can taste up to 700 times sweeter than natural sugar. So when people ask me, they say, I drink Coke, and I'm like, la, 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 la. But then I say, no, let's be realistic. Some people do. But I would rather somebody is on a journey to reduce Coke with natural sugar than artificial sweetener, because then we start a whole different sort of dynamic. So that's part of why, sugar is so hard to resist. So let's look at kind of the 411 on sugar. So it's important to read labels when we're thinking about how much sugar is in our diet, because there's lots of hidden sugars in processed foods. And so this little graphic down here, this is there's now, I think, 151 different names for sugar. And the reason that this is so is it's a marketing ploy so that we can, when I was a kid, you would read, and a new mom, right? Like in the 80s, you would look at a label, and as long as sugar wasn't in the top 3 ingredients, you'd be like, oh, this isn't so bad. Well, now sugar may not be till the 5th ingredient, but it's the 5th ingredient, the 6th ingredient, the 11th ingredient, the 21st ingredient, the 23rd ingredient. And so we have to be label detectives, really, because we need to understand how they're labeling sugar. And there's lots of things that we've never heard of, like, who knew that carob syrup? I mean, it kind of sounds like sugar. We've got, malt powder. I mean, what? So we have to really, be cognizant. And we have recently, at least in the United States, changed our labeling a little bit. So what you're looking for on labels now is total grams of sugar and then added grams of sugar. And, also what's really important when we're looking at labels is serving size. So people often say, well, what is the recommended amount of sugar? Now, I want to put a caveat in here because we all know what the recommended amount of alcohol is, or the safe amount of alcohol. And that's frankly, can I say crap? Frankly, that's a lot of crap, right? Like if you're drinking 2 glasses of wine or 2 alcoholic drinks a night as a woman, that's a lot of alcohol, you know, or 7 to 14. So I said that wrong. That's men, 2 drinks, women, 1 drink, right? But what's really interesting is when we see these organizations that put out these guidelines is, you know, they're really not the healthiest. They're like they're like a baseline, but it's not like wellness goals. So this comes from the World Health Organization, and it's a place to start. How much sugar? So they recommend no more than 36 grams for adult males, 25 grams for adult females, and 12 grams for children under 12. And this is where serving size is really powerful, because you can look at a yogurt, for example, and it's a single serving size, but yogurt like a, you know, a regular yogurt, Yoplait with blueberries. I think it's like between 18 and 22 grams of sugar. Now, that's not a lot of protein. It's not a lot of food. It's not a lot of energy to, you know, build a breakfast on, but you've already had almost your entire amount of sugar for a day as a woman. And so it's really powerful to think about, you know, how much excess sugar am I actually getting and how much do I really need? You know, what is a good rule of thumb? So the other one that really always makes me crazy is Gatorade. So my son was, you know, like a soccer player. And as athletes, you know, you're probably going to find people who say like, well, you know, sports drinks are really good. But for example, Gatorade. So first of all, they put them in those giant containers and they're actually 2.5 servings. And each serving is somewhere between 44 and 56 grams of sugar. But you will see a child on the soccer field consume that entire bottle. And so that is like, no wonder they're kind of, you know, feeling a little bit spun out afterwards. And so one rule of thumb that can be helpful is to look at no more than 5 grams of sugar per serving. So I used to, when I first started thinking I was eating healthy, like I was this wellness enthusiast, I would think, well, protein bar is a good, you know, snack. But often a snack, you know, a protein bar might be 12 grams of sugar or even more, 20 grams of sugar, depending upon what they're sweetening it with, right? And so if we look at, and this is 1 serving, we're like, well, if I wanted 5 grams of sugar, I'd have 1/5 of this little bar. And it's like, we can make a better choice. So when we think about how we're fueling our body, I think it's helpful to think about 5 grams of sugar per serving or no more than 25 grams for women, 36 grams for males. And this is, it might seem unachievable initially, but when we're focusing on, you know, things that actually fuel our body. So sugar gives us that quick punch of energy, but it's not long lasting. So let's talk about, oh, wait, I'm going to skip ahead because I want to share this. So this is the 3 macronutrients, really, right? We think about fats, protein, and carbs. And I think this is a really good example when we think about how we're actually fueling our body. So think of the macronutrients like logs in a campfire, right? So carbohydrates are the kindling we use to start the fire, which is great. So they're quick burning, right? If you've ever started a campfire, you know you start with the kindling, right, to get it going. And then once you have that flame, you put on those logs that will last longer. And that, in the case of macronutrients, would be your fats and proteins. And so what we see here is that when we add those long burning, those logs, they burn for much longer. And this is how we fuel our body. So if somebody was just eating carbs, if you've ever been on a high carb diet, you know, you'll know that, like, I'm hungry all the time. Have you ever just tried to eat salads with no protein or fat in your salad? Like, I'm just going to go on the salad diet. Why am I hungry all the time? It's like the kindling. If you've ever had a campfire and you've run out of logs, you're going to stand there and feed kindling to the fire to keep it going all day long. If you find a log and you put that log on the fire, you can walk away and that fire will have that slow, steady burn. So it's a really good analogy to think about oh, am I burning with kindling, or am I asking my body to just, go all day with just kindling, or am I putting on some of these logs that are really going to fuel my energy throughout the day? All right, I want to go back. Close your eyes while I make you go crazy here. Don't go dizzy. So, part of what's happening with sugar is blood sugar. And this is important to pay attention to because too much sugar in our diet can lead to long-term issues of insulin resistance and metabolic dysfunction and eventually diabetes. And so when we look at just basic blood sugar regulation, right? We want our blood sugar to be between 80 and 100 is kind of just a rule of thumb. Everybody's a little different. But so we think, okay, so we eat something. Here we have something to eat. And our pancreas makes insulin and our blood sugar goes up a little bit. And then as we digest, our blood sugar just goes down, and then we produce some glucagon and we help our blood sugar to rise up. And we just do this back and forth, this nice, easy, and this is the perfect example of blood sugar regulation, right? You eat, your blood sugar spikes a little bit, you digest, hormones come in and help, and it's all fine, and no organ is overworked. But what happens when we have too much sugar is the picture looks very different. And this is why it's so powerful to learn more about how your body is responding to blood sugar. So if we eat too much carbohydrates, I used to work at a high school and kids would come in with like a bag of Flamin' Hot Cheetos, talk about a palate reset, and, like a Starbucks Frappuccino. And so immediately their blood sugar is going to spike way up. And so then the pancreas is going to dump a ton of insulin. And with all that insulin, our blood sugar is going to come crashing down. And so this is where we get the crash, right? And the adrenals put the liver on high alert. It starts breaking down the muscle to convert to glucose. And we're looking for sugar because we are in that low state. And so we've got too much insulin. So everybody's trying to rush. And the other thing that happens here, the adrenals and the cortisol start to pump and they start to try to help regulate blood sugar. Well, you might know that cortisol, the other name for cortisol, is the stress hormone. So this is why when we have a lot of sugar in our diet, we tend to have more anxiety, we tend to have more mood swings. It's a big deal. And what happens is we have all of our organs overworked. And we end up with, so think PALS, the acronym PALS, pancreas, adrenals, liver. Those are the three main organs that help with blood sugar regulation. But remember, the liver is also responsible for about 500 other functions. And so when we are overeating sugar, we're asking our liver to do a lot of work. And so other bodily functions are not working optimally because the liver is overworked. So just a real quick chart on, what do they tell us kind of looks like it. So this is kind of like if we look at, if you're interested in any of this, I just threw this in here. It's a little bit more what you'll see when you go get your blood sugar readings from your doctor, right? So we can look at just what we talked about, this 80 to 100. So if you are waking up in the morning, your blood sugar should be around 80 to 100, right? And then when you eat, see how it spikes like 170 to 200. And then it gradually goes down. And so what we want to notice is, what's happening in that. If it's elevated or high, it's not starting at a lower level, and then it's spiking much higher, and it's also not coming down. So there's, different ways you can use your yearly or biannual lab work to check in on this. And you can actually do that very, very simple finger prick if you want to get a little bit more curious about what's happening with my blood sugar. We can also just ask our body, how do I feel? And I didn't put this in the slides, but one of the most simple things we can do is keep a food journal. And that food journal should have three things: food, mood, poop. So what did I eat? How did I feel? And did I eliminate? And that will give you so much information. And really, when it comes to blood sugar, we want to ask ourselves, okay, I just ate. Did I feel satisfied? Was I looking around for food afterwards? Did I feel hungry or spacey or tired? What is the impact of what I ate? If you've ever been in a work meeting or you use some kind of meeting and they give you a lunchbox, and the lunchbox, everybody will get their lunchbox and they'll be eating a sandwich and chips and cookie. And so we think about how those carbs are breaking down into sugar. And then about an hour after the meeting, everybody's like falling asleep in their chair, right? You never want to be the speaker after lunch. And that's because we have eaten a lot of sugar that's breaking down, and we didn't have those logs of protein and carbohydrates, or sorry, protein and fats. So think about how you feel after you eat. This is a really big part of just noticing how am I stabilized? Am I stabilized throughout the day? Okay, I think we talked about that. Is it okay if I pause in the middle and we'll go back? Amber, what do you think?
Sure, of course.
Because I've delivered a lot of information. So I just want to check in for questions and maybe chat a little bit about what I just shared and maybe define it a little further. So Amber, any top of mind questions come up?
Oh, I have so many thoughts. So you said the recommendation was 25 grams of sugar for women per day. And I was laughing because Vinny and I just ran a really long race. We ran like 60, 70 miles. And every 30 minutes, we had a gel that had 25 or 30 grams of sugar. So we had hundreds and thousands of grams of sugar. But the thing is, after you have 10 or 20 or 30 gels, your body will refuse to have another gel, and you'll eat one and just throw it up, and you're like, okay, no more gels, I'm done with the sugar. And then it's all about the pretzels and the chips and anything else that's not sugar. um but yeah, I you said, when we're eating, we should be very mindful about how the food is making us feel. And for anybody who's listening, I have a food and mood journal for recovery roadrunners, and I use it with my clients. And I say, hey, I want you to write down every single thing that you eat. I want to know how you felt before you ate and how you felt after. Track your moods, and you'll start to notice what are the best few foods that are going to fuel you and make you feel good throughout the day. So yes, I'm really interested now that we know, what the types of sugars are and how much to eat, how we can take all of this into our holiday season to get the results that we want. Okay, we don't want to gain weight. We don't want to give in to pressure in the holidays of overeating, overindulging in food and drinks, because then we feel ashamed and regret and all of these negative feelings that we have to then bounce back from. So I don't know if you know this, but I'm 100% plant-based, and so is Vinny, my boyfriend. So when we show up to a party as two sober vegan runners, 98% of the food and the drinks that they're giving us at that party or event is off limits. So I'm not going to eat the cheese or the meat, I'm not going to drink the alcohol. People look at us a lot of times like we're freaking aliens. They're like, but, they're offended, but I made this cheese dip. Why aren't you going to eat it? And it takes some practice to get it down to say thanks, but no thanks. I don't eat that. It's not part of my diet. So let's get into the best practices for surviving the holidays in a way that is going to fuel our goals and make us feel good about ourselves.
Yeah, so you bring up such a great point. And the first thing that you brought up that I think is really powerful is boundaries. So we have to have some boundaries around the holidays. We can't just the mindset that, well, I'm just going to eat whatever I want and I'll diet in January. Our metabolism just doesn't work like that. And so we want to start with asking, what are my intentions? And I love the word intention because it's different than a goal. A goal can be very black and white. We can fail or we can succeed, but an intention is really opening yourself up to what you are open to happening. So my intention is to be mindful about my eating and to limit my sugar during the holidays. And that could be a very powerful intention. And then from that intention, you can start to look at some boundaries, right? And of course, there's things that we've all heard for a long time that are helpful. You know, eat before you go. Don't go on an empty stomach. When it comes to alcohol, you know, get something in your hand when you arrive at the party so that people aren't offering you a drink. So there's not that extra pressure. Just having a drink in your hand, you know, then no one's going to say, "Can I get you a drink?" And you're like, "I'm good." So go get your soda water or whatever, and, you know, NA beverage you brought, and get a glass and then circulate through the party, and there won't be that added pressure. I think the other thing that's really helpful, and this also is sort of around boundaries, but we want to make a firm decision and have a plan when we go into these events, because if we don't have a plan, you know, a maybe means yes when it comes to alcohol and when it comes to sugar. And so if we go in and be like, "Oh, you know, I might have some extra sweets tonight," or if they have that really good dessert. So then, of course, your brain is going to say, you know, it's going to create that little loophole, and that's what's going to happen. So if you want to have one dessert, if that's your intention for that night, that's great. But have that firm plan so that when you get there, if it's after work and you're tired, or there was some stress on the way to the party, or you forgot your alcohol-free drink and now you're like, and then your brain is just, it needs something to anchor. And so I like to think of it as that firm decision is really helpful. So those two things can really set us up for individual events, kind of when we are at a party or family gathering, you know, have some boundaries. And part of the boundaries is to know what works for you. Like, what is healthy for me to eat in a party situation? And what, you know, and just play the tape forward. You know, ask yourself, what's likely to happen when I get there? How much sugar do I think is going to be served? Is it a holiday cookie party? You know, what does that look like? And sometimes, just like in our beginning of our alcohol-free days, it's okay to say no, or to, you know, set a different plan so that you're not running the gauntlet night after night after night. You know, for some of us, the holidays have work events and family events and neighborhood events, and we may not want to do 7 things. We may want to do 2. That might feel comfortable. And so when we think about self-care, you know, another term for boundaries is really self-care. And so if you think about, how am I going to take care of myself? It's not about disappointing someone and say, "You're not going to eat my cheese dip." It's about, you know, I want to be able to move through the holidays and not have those spikes in my blood sugar, the ups and downs of mood swings. And I want to be able to function throughout the holidays. And that looks like saying yes to this event and no to that event.
Yeah, and I love that. And I don't know, you know, we all have different events that we're going to. Somebody might have 10 holiday parties that they have to get through. I only have like 2 or 3.
Mhm.
You know, they're all, you know, a family Thanksgiving, a family Christmas. That's pretty much it. I'm not going to all the parties that I used to because I don't do that anymore. I just don't go. And I work from home. So I'm not at work at a work function where I'm forced to eat the food. But so I really have these 2 big meals to prepare for, to get through, where there will be people drinking alcohol, there will be people eating meat. I know for me, like you said, I have boundaries in place. I don't drink alcohol. I don't eat this. And so everybody kind of knows that about me. But if you're starting a new habit, that's really more of a personal choice, like you said, where you go in with a plan and you say, "I'm going to do this." I'm interested to hear your thoughts on mindset hacks, and if you have any tips, like if you're going into a party and you have already decided, "I am not drinking alcohol and I am not going to eat any sweets." because, last night I already ate cheesecake or whatever. So you've already decided that you're not going to. How are you going to stick to that?
Yeah, well, one thing that's really important is don't go hungry. So, one of the reasons that blood sugar can drop is that we might be saving ourselves. And how many of us have done that? Like, oh, I'm not going to eat because I want to save my calories for the event, but that usually backfires because if we're hungry and angry, we're just going to start eating something to get out of that state. And so we want to have some small meals throughout the day. And this goes back to blood sugar too. When we're making a change with our diet and avoiding sugar or removing sugar, we want to pay attention to a lot of times people say, well, I need to just eat 3 meals a day. But in the beginning, while we're working on digestion and we're changing up our diet a little bit and we're adding more fat and protein, small meals throughout the day might be the best thing. And so having a high protein, high fat snack before you go into the party will give you some energy and you won't have that blood sugar drop. So even if you do indulge in some sugar, if that's your plan, you're not going to get that crash where then you immediately reaching for more sugar to give you energy. So, we want to kind of prime the pump. So we want to have maybe some walnuts and olives. And if you eat meat, have a piece of protein or whatever that looks like for you. It doesn't have to be a lot of food, but really think about having something in your belly so that you are not starving and all of those good decisions go out the window. And so, yeah.
Yes, I've really evolved into this person who doesn't doesn't really like to celebrate with food or drinks
Mhm.
anymore, right? Old me, that's the only way I knew how to celebrate was with drinks and food. But now I'm this new version of myself. I like to celebrate with other things like running or, buying myself a new pair of running shoes or hanging out with some really fun, special people. I find other ways to celebrate and reward myself that have nothing to do with food or drinks. So when I go to a party, I'm showing up for the people and for the atmosphere, for the conversation that I'm about to have because, oh, I haven't seen these people in a really long time. This is going to be great. And I always eat before I go. We'll have a big meal before we go, so we're not even hungry. So we're not tempted to eat anything that's there, except for the veggies and the fruit is always okay. Um, or if I can't eat in advance, I will bring my own food with me. I've been known to show up to Thanksgiving where everybody's eating turkey and pie and whatever with a box from Whole Foods of salad and vegetables and plant protein. That's what Vinny and I did last year on Thanksgiving. We went to Whole Foods, we got our own meals and we got athletic brewing beer. We brought our own stuff.
Mhm.
And we might have got some weird looks from people, but we didn't care. We don't care what people think about what we're eating or not eating, drinking or not drinking. And that is a kind of confidence that comes with years of sobriety, right? So it does take practice if people are new to that. But I do hope that people would be open minded to the idea of letting go of other people's opinions and just doing what's best for you because we're in this group for a reason, Fit for the Holidays and Recovering Roadrunners. We're athletes. We eat to fuel our bodies, to fuel our next workout, our next run. So we're always thinking ahead to the next day. Well, I've got a long run tomorrow, so I'm not going to eat this or that, or I am going to eat this or that. So a lot of our choices, I think, revolve around running, and we have that in common. So we never go hungry. We are always, what can I eat? What am I going to eat? I've got to eat. And I don't weigh my food or count calories, and I always tell people eat until you're satisfied. Eat what you want to fuel your health, to fuel your running, to fuel your sobriety. So I would love to hear thoughts from Anke or Maureen if you have a question for
I
Terry.
do have a question.
All
Yes.
right.
So remember that I've been trying to be vegan also. And my biggest issue was that I wasn't, because of the time I have. Sometimes I just always just pick the same thing because it's quicker for me to go to eat, work, this and that. So I wasn't getting my protein. But then at the same time, because a lot of the sources of protein are also carbs. I'm always over my sugar, no matter how healthy I eat, because I'm logging my food in that fitness pal right now. I'm always over the sugar. And it can be all good sugar, it's not the bad sugar, it's just good sugar, but I'm always over. And it doesn't matter, like I don't understand how to, first of all, get the protein I need being plant-based. So that's why I turned kind of vegetarian and started getting like at least eggs and like cottage cheese and like yogurt, because it just wasn't working for me because I wasn't able to get the protein I needed through plant-based. And then at the same time, now that I'm eating more vegetarian, I'm still going over the sugar, even though I ate mostly was like fruits or, the plant protein that has the carbs. And, I'm always going over. So it doesn't matter which type of sugar, or do you want to stay 25 grams or less in bad sugar, or is it that also with like good sugar?
Yeah, I think the 25 is really added sugar. So we're looking, and it's a good point. Thank you for asking that, because fruits and vegetables are going to have natural sugars. And so that's going to be basically okay. But we also want to pay attention to, and I love that you are experimenting and noticing, like, okay, so it's too much to go vegan right now. I need to get some more tools in place. I need to understand really the protein piece. And so I'm adding in some, other forms of protein. The school that I went to, we did not do plant-based. We did, animal protein. And so, I am open to both, but I don't have as much, personal knowledge around how to get enough protein plant-based. But we know that we can't just survive. Think of the campfire. We can't just have carbs. We will not have enough energy, and we will overeat. We will just be eating all day long. And so, really thinking about what can I experiment with that's going to bring in more sources of protein. And, the thing about carbs, so when I say those macronutrients, carbs are fruits and vegetables, but simple carbs, pretzels, crackers, chips, they break down bread, they break down into sugar as well. And so that's why we have to be careful with, how we're setting it up and noticing, and that's why having that sort of rule around sugar is helpful, because it's a place to start. And then everyone, to your point, Anka, is going to look different. We're all individuals. And so if you start with a template of, protein, carbs, and fat, and then you're going to tweak, like, maybe I eat more protein than the average bear. Maybe I eat more fats, works for my body. This is why that food journal is really helpful.
Yeah. Speaking from a plant-based sober runner, I'll tell you what I like to eat for protein. And I cook for Vinny, and he loves my cooking. Toot my own horn, pat my own back. I love to cook. I've got tons of cookbooks. We eat a lot of tofu, beans, lentils, and yeah, there was one more. Tofu, lentils, beans, and nut butters, peanut butter and almond butter and nuts and seeds, and every single vegetable on the planet has protein. So we're never worried about getting enough protein. We also like to have a protein shake and put lots of, greens and veggies and fruits and seeds. Like we'll put chia seeds and flax seeds in there, which also have protein. So I get plenty of protein, and I'm never feeling hungry. Just a side
Yeah,
note.
I love what you said about the shakes, because I consider protein shakes like a salad, right? Like take your protein base and then add all kinds of good things. Add your spinach, add your almond butter, add your chia seeds, and make it and mix it up. One of the other things that's so important when we think about nutrition overall, and people often miss this, is variety. So variety is really what helps, build our gut health. And so we want to have fiber and variety. That's what helps build those prebiotics to make our probiotics. So we have pro, and postbiotics. And so we really want to think about how do we set our gut up to support us. Because when it comes to sugar, too much sugar can throw off that microbiome balance. And then we've got this place where we are maybe having excess yeast, and then the bad bugs start to overpopulate our gut. And then they're the sugar monsters. There's the ones saying, we need sugar, feed us. And what you have to do is starve them to death. So that's where you got to dial down that excess sugar in order to reset your palate, help your gut, and fuel your body in a way that is sustainable throughout the day.
Yes, starve them to death. I love that. It's the same as a zero tolerance for alcohol.
Yeah.
And I honestly don't eat a lot of sweets. Sometimes Vinny will go to Sprouts and get the vegan chocolate chip cookies, which are absolutely delicious. We'll eat those and then we'll say, okay, don't buy those anymore because we can't stop eating them. Oreos are also vegan, so we'll eat Oreos sometimes, but we try not to. We eat a ton of fruit, which is very satisfying. All of the fruits, mangoes, pineapples, all of the fruits. We also eat dates, which are the perfect runner food, and the perfect sweet treat dessert too. So you get a date, cut it in half, put a teaspoon of peanut butter, put a walnut, and it's delicious. You could even roll it in some melted dark chocolate and make it like a little Snickers bar. I
Mm-hmm.
made that for myself on my birthday actually last year. So I don't really feel the need to go all in on the sweets because I have enough options that are satisfying. I do think people should feel satisfied and not always like they're white knuckling it and, you know, I can't eat anything that tastes good. I can't drink anything anymore and my life sucks. My life is boring. Like that is no way to live. I think people should really do their research and find some recipes that are both healthy, satisfying, and delicious. And Terry, I know you have recipes that you can share. I have tons of recipes that I can share too, but it's just on Google. Just go on Google and find some things that you can prepare at home that you're going to love to eat. And then you never have to feel deprived. And you've still got your nutrition intact, your health, your sobriety, you're working towards your goals, whether that's running or weight loss or sobriety. And I don't think it doesn't have to be an all or nothing. Like, oh, I have to give up everything I love if I want to be sober, if I want to be an ultra runner. No, that's not true. Like, I still enjoy my life to the fullest, even more now that I'm a sober vegan runner. And it takes research and practice and dedication, and then you get to the other side and you realize, wow, I'm not missing out on anything.
Yeah, I love that. And I'm a foodie. I come by it naturally. My mom, and so one of my goals is always for people to have delicious and nutritious food. When we're eating foods that serve our body and that have flavor and a variety of flavors, there's so many delicious foods, and we do not have to, one, go hungry, or two, satisfy pleasure and taste. We just got to be careful that it's natural pleasure. So like when we talk about dopamine and alcohol, we think about like the difference between, having a bunch of drinks and feeling that high versus watching a sunrise. And this is the difference between eating, 10 chocolate chip cookies and having a natural, a protein shake that has a lot of fiber, that has a balance of nutrients so that we feel full and satisfied, and it was tasty. And so we want to just sort of, really think with this holistic mindset, like how am I nourishing my body? And you mentioned mindset. I did just have like one other slide I'll share with y'all about kind of this idea of habits and sugars. So I don't know how much habit work you do with your clients, Amber, but when we look at James Clear, we think about the 4 laws of behavior change, right? So make it obvious. So keep good food in your kitchen. How do you eat good food? You keep good food in the kitchen. Make it invisible. If there is food that you don't want to eat on a regular basis, put it high on a shelf, move it out of your pantry, put it in the back of the fridge, take it to the downstairs fridge. It's really, pretty easy to do the obvious and make it invisible, right? And then make it attractive. One of the things we can do is pair it with something you want to do. So let's say you're having trouble doing your food journal. You can say, oh, I do my food journal while I have my cup of tea or my cup of coffee or my cup of chai. And that's satisfying. Like I do it with something I already am doing, something I enjoy. And so we can pair it to make it easier. If you want to make it unattractive, uncouple that, right? And then make it easy. So, meal prepping ahead of time, getting some prepared foods, keeping the things you're eating simple. Like it doesn't have to be complicated to eat well. One of my friends who went to nutrition school with me, she likes to take all of the vegetables that are starting to go in her fridge, do a pan roasted vegetable with a natural oil, and then half of those vegetables can be reheated and used for meals. The other half she blends into soup. And so it's like, okay, now that was the simplest thing. I got 2 different kinds of meals and textures out of one thing I did. It doesn't have to be complicated. And then make it satisfying. We just talked about that, right? Habits do not restrict freedom, they create it. And so I think that's a really great lesson from James Clear. And then this one, I like to say eat a pickle. In fact, one group used to call me Coach Pickles. So you can retrain your brain to want less sugar. And one thing you can do is ask yourself, much like we do with drinking, is what do I need right now? Maybe if you find yourself in the kitchen looking around for something sweet, ask yourself, am I actually hungry? Maybe I need to step outside. Maybe I'm thirsty. Maybe I need to call a friend. I'm looking for connection. I'm feeling disconnected. Maybe I need to check in with my body and do some breathing. And so that's another way to just really pay attention and then set yourself up for success with that habit loop, right? Keep good food in the house, pay attention to what we're making obvious, and then those small meals with more protein. And then I like to say, if you're really having a sugar craving, go in the kitchen, open your fridge and eat a pickle. Because your brain is saying, I want a chocolate chip cookie, for example, Amber, right? And now you eat a pickle and your brain goes, wow, I wasn't expecting that. And it's a way to really like reset in the moment. So just kind of to have fun with that. And then I did, the last slide I included was anybody wanted to know more about what I do. So I've got, a podcast, a YouTube channel, and an Instagram account. And then of course my website. So
yeah, leave that slide up there so that we can see it, and I'll pin that in the show notes. Thank you so much. I have 2 things to say.
yes.
Atomic Habits by James Clear is one of my top 3 books of all time. I love that. And anybody can go on Google and search for the Atomic Habits free workbook to quit drinking. And there's also a free workbook to increase exercise. So these workbooks by James Clear, they're absolutely free. They're like 30 pages long, and you can go through them to help you get sober and also to help you establish a new exercise routine. I have them on my computer. I've used them. They're absolutely great. And the pickle. You say eat a pickle. That's funny, Teri, because pickles are actually the only one food on the planet that I hate. I will eat it if it's in like a Beyond Burger. I will eat it, but I think maybe I should go back to it because I haven't tried it really since I was a kid because I hated it that much. But runners love pickles and pickle juice. They pass out pickle juice shots at endurance runs because of the salt. And I'm always like, oh, I hate pickles. I can't drink that.
Amber, make
Maybe
your
I should
own
try.
pickles. Make your if
What?
you make your own pickle, make your own pickles. You'll like it much better.
Okay.
Make your own. That's what I
Okay.
do now. Like I make my own. It doesn't take long, and they're not as sour, and they don't taste as like reserved. And you
Yeah.
put them in the fridge, and you'll like it much better. You just buy the little pickles and cut them into spears, and I think it's just a little bit of sugar, salt, vinegar, water, and you just put them in your fridge, and you'll like it much better probably.
Okay, I'm gonna try that. I'm totally gonna try that because I'm the only runner on the planet who doesn't drink the pickle juice at the aid station, and I gotta change that.
Well, and it's okay. We can all have our own individual likes and dislikes. Another option would be to have a bite of sauerkraut. You know, something that's just kind of mix up your taste buds and trick yourself into saying like, oh, what I was really looking for was like a way to, you know, because we know when we eat sugar in those moments, we tend to feel kind of like, you know, we sort of get that low dip. And instead, we're going to be like perked up because we've done something healthy for our body. And we've reminded our brain that, oh, I wasn't maybe looking for something sugary. That wasn't really what I needed. So yeah, I love that. And I do also for some, you know, for many people, I will say you can add some Himalayan salt to your water. Not that you would want to drink a lot of salt, you know, when you're running necessarily, but we miss a lot of nutrients in the way that our soil is depleted nowadays. And so as you work to hydrate yourself, adding some Himalayan salt into your water can, natural salt has over 90 trace minerals, things like manganese and chromium and selenium that we don't get readily from our food supply. And so there's so many simple things we can do to feel better as we support our bodies through recovery from too much alcohol or too much sugar.
That's a good point. And you're actually speaking our love language because we pour salt into our water all the time. There's a product that I love called Element, and they make like watermelon and all different flavors. And we pour it in our water bottles and go running, and we need salt and we need sugar. So the trick here is to figure out how much and when. And once you get it down, it's like, oh, that's a piece of cake. I got it. So thank you so much for being here, Teri. I know people can find you on the Sober Edge podcast on YouTube at the Sober Nutritionist YouTube channel. Also online at terry.thesobernutritionist.com and at the sobernutritionist.com. Thank you so much. You really shared a lot of valuable information for us. We're very thankful to have you, and I hope that you hear from some of the recovery road runners that are interested in hearing more of what you have to say.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, keep it simple and listen to your body and, you know, try Amber's journal because just tracking how you're feeling is kind of the first thing to pay attention to. You know, we don't often realize what impact sugar is having until we start to really check in with ourselves. So I hope you have a sweet holiday that doesn't overdo the sugar. Thanks,
Oh,
Amber.
thanks, Teri. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next time. Bye.